basic skills of Java, and then we will again come back and continue the remaining things. But meanwhile, we will start today the MySQL database. Essentially, its foundations of computer science consists of one language like Java, and then one database so that we can store the database and then retrieve it for doing the projects and all that. It is a relational database, right? So normally all of you must be aware of that it is an RDBMS, right? Relational Database Management System. It will have its own server as well as a client by which you can access the data. A lot of other facilities are made available, but we won't go into all those details. But essentially, we'll be learning about SQL. So it is a language. SQL is a language by which you can request the MySQL to store and retrieve the data. It is a structured query language, we call it. So these days, like data can be categorized into two categories. One is structured data, the other one is non-structured or unstructured data. Structured data is available in the form of SQL. Sometimes there is another popular storage of data which is called as JSON data, JavaScript object notation, in the form of plain text actually. This is also considered to be structured because there is like we focus more on data rather than the other what you call connected words. For example, in the natural language, when you store the data in the form of natural language, there may be data as well as mixed with other connected verbs, connected words, and all that. So, structured query language, essentially. So, I'm right now working on Linux platform, but you can also work on Windows on both platforms. MySQL software is available. You can install it by just simply using your Chrome or any browser. Just simply say MySQL install. You are going to get certain links, and you like follow those things in order to install it. So there is one like probably still people are joining. So try to join on time so that. Okay, so essentially I'm talking about this particular thing like MySQL now, for example, you want to this thing like you can say MySQL followed by install, and then for example Windows, right? So just simply click enter. It's going to go into several things. So one is on mysql.com itself. MySQL right now is in fact taken over by Oracle. Earlier it used to be open source, but even now it is continuing with the same old privileges and all that. So there is one link here, install Windows, mysqltutorial.org. Go through this particular thing, mysqltutorial.org. So this is a good place for you to explore and continue to learn that. I'm just going to share it on your this thing like a chat box so that all of you can take a look into this. So I have sent the link to this MySQL tutorial that contains both about how to install as well as how to learn even, how to continue learning on that particular aspect. Let me share on this one also so that probably you can take a look on to. This is the actual website. So you have instructions, clear instructions about how to install, and also about how to start using after installing. Both the things are available here. This is one way of learning SQL, MySQL. Another way is you can as well go into one of the online tutorials on MySQL. Let me show you about. But all these things, definitely you need to work on that, continue to work on that to learn. So, for example, other popular places for learning MySQL is by using MySQL followed by tutorial. So one is MySQL tutorial itself is there, tutorial point you have, and then Java T point, W3 schools, all these things. So probably you can go into W3 schools also. Right? It is one of the popular website for learning many software courses. So you can see here, once you try to first install it, and after that you go through these tutorials. Right? Essentially, the MySQL will help you to create tables, right? Create the table. We use the terminology called tables here to store the information. So, what are the vocabularies here that we go around? If you just take a look into MySQL, basically contains, like, it can manage databases, right? It can manage databases. So, a database is basically a collection of tables. You can consider this as like a simple definition of a database is a collection of tables to begin with. There are several other objects, but tables is one of the important things. So, but then you are actually using the word like table here. What is a table then? A table is
Has rows and columns.
right. So, table is a place to store the information. So, it can be considered as a collection of rows of columns, right? Rows of columns, you can consider that. So each row stands for one entity, like what it is, one data item. You can consider
Record.
that. Right. Record also is another way of calling it. So columns can be considered as fields, right? For example, you consider as it's basically a matrix-like thing, except that, for example, like an Excel sheet. So what will be there in Excel sheet? You have a matrix there, right? Where you have a number of columns and you have a number of rows. Whereas here, like there is a well-defined syntax for creating tables, well-defined syntax for inserting records, right, into the table. Similarly, you want to update the existing data on the table. You have mechanisms for that. You want to create a table. So to begin with, first you have to create a database and then start using a database. There may be many databases that you can actually use. For example, one database you want to maintain for education purpose, another database meant for transportation, one more database meant for maybe travel or tourism kind of thing, or whatever. So within that database, all the relevant tables, whatever the data that you want to store, are going to be maintained within that. But normally you don't actually store a single table. There will be a number of related tables. That's the reason why you call it as relational database management system. There can be relations among the, relation is actually another word for a table, actually, strictly speaking. Another word for a table. Anyhow, so slowly let us come on to what it is. Let us maybe use one of these websites and then see what you can actually learn. So tutorials point also is reasonably good point for you to actually go through that particular thing. A lot of explanation might be there within that particular thing. Introduction, home, and all a lot of things is actually giving. So there was a break in the internet. Are you getting my voice now? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, everything is all right now. I was just showing you the on the mysqltutorial.org. There is something called basic MySQL tutorial. Getting started with all that and so on. Okay, so it's going somewhere. Like instead of that, let me give a better idea here, and after that we can come back to that. Okay, so essentially MySQL now comes with two softwares: MySQL client, MySQL server. It is a MySQL server that will actually uh, accept the SQL commands and then insert or retrieve the data that is required from the MySQL clients. So one way of going for client server model is that one can run a single server and make several clients to connect to that and start using simultaneously. So that is possible as a part of the MySQL server. In fact, you can host a MySQL server on one machine, on an internet or something like that, and then people from all over the internet can connect to that particular server, and then like maybe connect to your database and all. So what are the important things here whenever you want to use? You need to connect to the MySQL server, and within the server, because it maintains many databases, you need to connect to the database also or start using the database. So before using any of these things, you have to first connect to MySQL server. Right. So there is a one command, MySQL client will be there. Using that client, you try to connect to the server. So once you connect to the server, you need to use a database. Use a database. Because there may be many databases that the MySQL server might be maintaining. So you have to start using the database. After using the database, then like you have access to the tables within that particular database. Then you can, what it is, insert or retrieve or update or delete. Any of these operations can be performed. Data. So this kind of things. So that's why the commands, SQL commands are categorized into two categories. One is the data definition language. The other one is data manipulation language. In the data definition language, you only create the structures. You only create the templates for storing the information. Data definition language. It is a part of the SQL actually, right? You are actually talking about SQL here. SQL consists of DDL and DM. Data definition language. Using DDL, it is possible for you to create the, for example, you can create a database. You can create the tables. You can alter the table structures. You can modify the table structure. So such kind of things is called as data definition language, where it actually works only on the metadata. Metadata means like you are interested in storing your data, but to store that, the MySQL or any of the RDBMSs make use of internally several other like what you call fields or data or that kind of stuff. DML stands for data manipulation language. Data manipulation, that means. So using this DML, you can actually, what it is, store the information, retrieve the information, that kind of stuff. వేరే క్లాస్ ఉంది చెప్పాను పర్లేదు అయిపోయిందా ఫోన్ ఫోన్ గుడ్ నాగేశ్వర break in the connection or whatever. I'm just updating once again. Okay. I think everything is all right now. Now we are talking about these things. So under the DDL, like probably you can think of creating structures, right? Create table, or database, right? Or alter also. Alter table. Update table is different. Alter table is there.
Truncate.
Similarly, ultimately drop table. Drop table is by which you can remove the table completely. Anyhow, so data manipulation language, like here under DML, there are many commands. So one among them happens to be select command. Select is the actual query by which you can retrieve the information. You can retrieve the information by using this select command. And if you want to insert data into a table, there is a command called insert command. You can insert new rows or new records, right? After inserting certain information, you feel like changing some of the values. You are not adding any new records or new rows, but the existing rows, some of the fields within them you want to change. And for that, you use the command called update. If you want to remove certain entries, remove certain rows or records, there is a command called delete command. So these are some of the DML, data manipulation language commands. All these things come under SQL, and you are mostly learning under this chapter or unit MySQL, and mostly consists of SQL only. Right? We will take a look into that particular aspect one by one. Okay, so actually I have created another database, tables and all that. So unfortunately, I don't have access to that particular machine. But we will go slow a little bit and then do one by one about how to do that. So we have seen so far, these are the things what you can actually do. Remember, most of these databases, they also give you access to the database is possible through a higher level language. Higher level language. So people are not interested just using SQL and then do something. Ultimately, the programming, right? So you want to write programs using Java, probably. You want to access the MySQL, right? So higher level programming languages. It is possible for you to get access to the all these services through a higher level language. Like using Java, you can connect to MySQL, and then do all those things from the Java program itself. Is possible. Similarly, other languages like Python also supports, PHP supports. So many languages support connecting to a database. MySQL is only one of the RDBMS supporting what it is softwares. But there are many other uh, database systems. So MySQL is one example. There are other possible things like, for example, Postgres SQL. So there is another thing called PostgreSQL. This is another database system, you can say. And Oracle, all of you are familiar with the very company mostly does its activity in database systems only. MySQL and PostgreSQL, both of them are open source database systems. Oracle is a proprietary one, meaning that you have to buy the software from Oracle Corporation. Similarly, you have SQL Server. SQL Server is from Microsoft, actually. This is also proprietary, and you have to pay for the database system there as a part of it. Even IBM has one such thing, DB2, right? DB2 is from IBM. In fact, way back, even before Microsoft and Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, and so on, this DB2 is the oldest of all these things. IBM started with, because earlier people used to have only mainframe systems, right? Computers means IBM in one point of time in 1950s, 60s, 70s, and all that. Computer means very highly costly mainframe systems. So where they used to keep all of them in a specialized environment, having centralized air conditions and all that. So in those days, popular database used to be DB2, which is actually what it is, a software coming from IBM, International Business Machines, like this. So as a part of that, we are going to study MySQL. And remember, all these languages, all these database systems support SQL. So this is one way of standardization. You don't have to learn everywhere. So once you learn a structured query language, there is maybe 90-95% of the compatibility will be there. Even SQL also has got many standards there, but mostly 90 to 95% of them are going to be common, so that whenever you switch from one database to another database, you don't have to again feel what it is, alien or new to that particular platform, because SQL is the way by which you can instruct the database system to store and retrieve the information. So all these database systems, apart from providing SQL only very basic primitive versions actually, but if you want to do some kind of programming within the database system, they also provide by way of something called stored procedures. Right? So stored procedures and functions. So all those functionality also mostly all these languages do support. So for a good length of what it is, database management and all that, you can use SQL, stored procedures and functions. But ultimately, people want to give access to the end users by using a high-level language like one of these languages, Java, Python, PHP. And from there, you connect to the database and all that. So when people join industry and all that, they might take certain people as database specialists who will work only on database environment. They don't write Java programs, Python and PHP. Instead, they will be specialists in administering the database, design as well as maintaining all that. So there is something called DB admin, right? Database admin. Just like you require an administrator for administering the operating system. So you require, for example, Unix admin, right? You normally call it Unix administrator, database administrator. Similarly, right? These are all specialized experts that will learn all the details within that particular domain, and then provide the service to the organization there and all. Now let's come back to the MySQL now, what it is, how to actually use that and so on. I'm just taking here this particular interface. Maybe I will log out and so that I will show you how things will work. So this is the interface. So this is what it is. Like that. So I'm right now using a Linux platform. This is a Linux terminal. You also can use either Linux or Windows, no issue. Because I only have access to this today, that's why I'm just using this. But whenever you want to connect to this after installation, once the installation is over, only in this, like the normal command is going to be MySQL -u, and then any username you can specify. For example, in this case, -u followed by root, and after that, password must be prompted when you press enter. This is a likely command in order to connect to the database. This is a MySQL here is a client program. Server must be running in the background. So by using services and all that, so that is a different thing. Like you don't require, like by default, the operating system, once it is loaded at startup, most of the time, these services will be launched. So that's why you are actually using the client here, MySQL -u root -p, like. Whereas on this machine, like here, it's going to ask you the password. Then you enter the password there and all that. On this, like, because of the security reasons and all that, root privileges is actually not provided, right? So it's always better to work under a normal user rather than a root privilege kind of thing. So in order to use that, like there is another way by which, especially under what you call Linux, you can use sudo followed by MySQL. And here it's going to take me to this particular prompt. So right now, as you can see, MySQL prompt is there, meaning that the system is ready. And if you see there, Oracle is a registered trademark and all that, because MySQL now is taken by Oracle. So Oracle startup message is being displayed there. If you want to see all the help and all that, you can type help. Just like operating system has got a dollar as a prompt, MySQL also is having now a prompt of its own. Now, once you come to this, there are a number of commands that you must slowly get used to. So at this level, there is something called show command. Show is a command. Remember, these things are not clearly SQL. They vary from database to database. Show followed by databases. And then a semicolon. Semicolon is a terminator in most of the commands under MySQL. You see here, it is now displaying various databases that this system is providing. By default, MySQL will come with all these 4 databases, in fact. All these 4 databases. So we will create now a database for our own purpose. So in order to create a database, how do you do that? There is a command called create. Create database followed by database name. What it is? Foundations of computer science, let us say. Semicolon. See that? It is such a simple command. It's going to be done normally only once in a, like entire your course or whatever. So now, if you again use your up arrow, it's going to display the previous commands and all that. So now, show databases. It is now showing FCS also as a part of it. FCS also as a part of it. Now, after doing this, before actually executing SQL commands and all that, you must use a database. So there is a command called use. Use followed by FCS. Whereas FCS is a newly created database. So there won't be any tables, nothing of that kind, empty. Whereas MySQL, if you see, use MySQL, for example. Because MySQL is a database. What is the syntax? Use followed by database name. Use followed by MySQL. So then it's going to tell you database is changed, reading table information and all. Now after issuing this use command, now you can ask the command system to show the tables within that particular what you call database. So you say show tables. It's going to display so many tables. There are 31 rows, meaning that 31 tables are there within it. See, table names are also stored in another table. Just like you have files and directories and all that, here every data is stored in the form of tables only, including the metadata and all that. So these are the various things as such. For example, user is a table. Servers is another table. Tables privilege is another table. Right? So you know now the database table. So then every table will have its own structure. Just now we said. A table contains a number of columns. So how after creating your table and all that, maybe you are giving it to somebody else. At any point of time, you want to know what is the structure of a table, right? So in order to know that, there is a command called describe. Either you can type complete describe word or the first 4 letters of the describe, DESC, followed by table. DESC followed by table. User is a table. Just now we are actually giving. So describe user. So there are so many entries, 45 rows. That means 45 columns are there within this. So all your MySQL user details are maintained in user table. For example, username and what is the password, right? And all other connected details are maintained within this particular what I call user table. Anyhow, so let's not go into this particular MySQL related database and all that. We want to use our own database. So let us come back to use FCS. Anytime you can change it. Any number of times you can change it under the MySQL prompt. So again now use FCS means it is again saying database is changed. Right now we are working under FCS. Do we have any tables under that? So tables. Let's say empty set. Whenever there are no entries within a table or within whatever, it's going to give a reply saying that empty set. See, the foundation of all the relational database management systems is the set theory actually. Set theory is the foundation of all the what you call relational database management system. Sets, like in mathematics, there is something called sets, right? So sets of certain entries. So you can have only sets of data, whatever. And every row is uniquely identifiable from every other row by using some of the concepts called primary keys and all that. Right? So we may have to actually use, for example, I'm just saying sets. Right? Or the foundation of this entire RDBMS, whatever. Set theory will help you definitely. So in set theory, like what are the things? You can actually take a union of two sets, right? So meaning that you are going to get all the elements from this set and all the elements from the other set. Together, we call it as a union. These are the operations, right? Similarly, intersection of two sets is possible. Meaning that whatever the rows that are common to both the sets, you are going to get the corresponding thing. There is another thing called minus in sets. So set A minus set B, we can say, right? A minus B. Set A minus B means what? Only the elements that are present in A but not in B. That's the meaning of A minus B means. Elements that are there in A, that means that are only there in A. That's what you mean by. So, but not in B kind of. A minus B, we're going to get that, and so on. Anyhow, so these are some of the things. Now let us create a, like we have seen some of the commands so far. Create database. Create database. And then describe, you have seen. We have seen show databases. And then show tables. These are some of the commands that we have seen so far. Now you want to create a new table, right? You want to create a new structure. For example, person as a table. Let us say you want to create a person table. So within this, probably what are some of the entries within this? You want to have an ID, person ID, then maybe name of the candidate, right? Name of the candidate. So maybe he's a kind of a employee kind of it, let us say. So what is the designation kind of it? Designation. Maybe gender. And then maybe a department. And then salary. Something like this. 3 plus 6 fields. You can also have a date of joining, that kind of stuff. We'll slowly add other stuff later on. So if this is the case, right, how are you going to create the corresponding things? So the command for that is simple. Create table. Create space table. Because you can use create to create other objects as well, other structures kind of. So that's why you have to specify create space what? You want to create a table. So create table. After this, the bracket begins. Normal bracket. And then you'll have to specify the attributes, the fields within that. So you say ID, and then you have to specify the data type of these. Just like in programming languages, you have data types there. Here also you have to specify the what kind of data you want to store within that particular field. Because fields can be, you can store certain numbers, numerical data you want to store. Within that you may have only whole numbers, integers, or fraction things like float kind of thing. Similarly, names you want to store in the form of strings or whatever. You require a data type for that. Similarly, joining date kind of thing. So you require another data type for that. So like this, there are many data types in fact, right? But slowly let us learn one by one. So there is something called int data type, just like in this thing. So this is how you can specify. The first column or field is ID, and its data type is integer, comma. That means you are defining another column. So now you can specify name. And what is the data type of this? There are basically for string kind of thing, there are two types: character data type, varchar data type. Character data type will always fix the amount of storage required. Varchar is going to be more flexible and dynamic. Depending upon the requirement only, that much memory only will be allocated. So most of the times we use varchar, variable character length. That's what we mean by varchar of. And then you have to specify what is the maximum length of name that you want to store. That you have to specify. For example, 40 characters is the maximum length. So like this you can specify. Name varchar of 40. So there are so many data types. You can just go through the online tutorials. You will get to know all those things one by one. For example, gender I want to have later next to that. Gender maybe male, female, a single letter, M or F you want to store. So in which case you can just simply specify of, or simply char also will do in fact. Simply char also will do. And then designation is there, for example, designation followed by. So this is again a varchar kind of it, varchar of, so let us say 20 characters, 20. And then department. This is not the correct way of creating tables, ideally speaking, which you will get to know in the later classes. But for the time being, because you are only creating a single table and then you want to work on that, so we are going with this. Normally, to what it is, to create any database system kind of it, there will be many tables, right? And within any table, only those fields that are closely tied, only those fields will be specified. So for example, here, I think even though I have just talked about like in a array, we are going on, create table, and after that what? Table name, right? You have to specify the table name. What is the table name here? Person. Person is the table. Create table, table name. Any name you can give, right? As long as the name has got certain names and you identify kind of thing, you will have to use that. So department here, department name, that's what we really mean by varchar of. It's also maybe another 20 characters. Department. And then salary. Salary. Integer is good enough. Okay, let us specify integer only. Apart from this, you want to store, let us say, some requirement for fractions and all that. That's what I'm actually looking at. Or maybe some kind of qualification, right? Your merit. So what is the percentage that you got? Whatever, that kind of stuff, let us say. So merit, I call it. Then, because this is actually, so some entrance exam, let us say, in order to recruit an employee, they have conducted an entrance. So what is the percentage of marks that you got in the interview, entrance and all that kind of stuff. So there is a possibility of fractions also here, let us say. Right? So some numbers 0.5, 0.25. So that kind of stuff is possible. So in which case, use float here. Float of, so total length, like your decimal point, fractions, how many you want, and then the other side also. So all that you will have to specify. So 100 is the possibility asset. So that means 3 digits there, a point and another distance. So 5, 2, I call it. So 3 whole numbers and then 2 digits in the fractions part as a part of it. And then another parenthesis at the end of it. So this is a simple structure to begin with. Remember, like whenever people think about designing any new language and all that, all these things are the languages. Just like you have so many natural languages, Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, and all that, English, Hindi, like that. There is certain, what it is, principles, language principles behind all these languages. But every language is unique. And language is used for communication purpose. So what you are thinking, you want to communicate to the other person, right? So then the language is going to be helpful. Whereas here, these are the programming languages or the how to create database and all that. So in order to instruct a system, so they have designed certain syntax for that. And you are adhering to that and then doing all that kind of stuff. So after doing all this, now you can actually copy this particular thing and go back to now your MySQL prompt is the one. So here at this point, you can actually paste it. Yeah. You can see that create table person. So it's giving the in between hyphen greater than, meaning that the command is still not complete. The commands in MySQL, they are considered to be complete only when you end them with semicolon. Until that time, it's going to continuously ask you what next, and so on. Like so, semicolon here. The moment you give it, then it's saying query OK, 0 rows affected, right? Because you have not inserted any data. You have only created a table structure. That's why it's saying its query is okay. That means syntax, everything is okay. It has created the table, but at the end of it, it's going to tell you how many rows are affected. 0 rows affected here as a part. Now to know whether it has happened or not, just simply use show databases, right? Show tables. Show tables. The moment you say this now, tables in FCS. You can see that tables in FCS is the database name under which we are actually using. So person is a table now. So if you want to know what is the structure of this at any point of time, you can say describe followed by our table name. Describe followed by person. Then it's going to tell you all this. So field names, what is the data type of that, and then null value permitted or not. So whenever you are inserting data, are you going to permit null values within that? So there are so many constraints that one can actually use. And what is the default value for that particular field in case you don't specify the corresponding field as a part of the insert command or whatever. Any other extra things and so on, primary keys, all that. So this is how you can create databases or create tables. Now you want to add data into that. You want to insert data into that. That's what you mean by that. So how are you going to do that? Command for that is insert command. So the command is insert into. Insert into what? Table. What table? Insert into person. And after this, you have to specify values. This is again a keyword followed by parenthesis data. So this is how you can actually insert data into tables. Insert into followed by table name and then values of followed by whatever data that you want to. So what data is it actually? First it is integer. Integer means some ID basically. So let us say 101 is the ID of the candidate. So you specify 101. And then a name, it is a varchar. Names, as all of you are familiar, they are going to be entered into within the quotes. Normally you use a single quote. You can also use double quote, it doesn't matter. So single quote followed by name of the candidate. So person here. So for example, starting with the letter A, Amar, no. Amar, not. Okay, quote ends. So second thing is gender. Gender is male or female, right? So you specify M here. Because it is again a character, that's why you have to put it within the quotes. And designation is this thing. So single quote. So what is the designation of this particular person? So we'll have to give some designation, maybe accountant, right? Accountant. Right? Then what else? Like department, right? Department is, so this is accountant normally. Where will they be kept? Finance department. Finance department. And then what is the salary for the accountant? Salary for the accountant is, let us say, 25,000. And then what is the merit that this particular person? So merit is, let us say, 75.25. It's a real number. So you can specify like values of like this. After giving all this now, if you want to see the entire thing in one screen, we can always, like you can have a enter key like this, no issue. Insert into person values of all this. Either in the same line you can complete or in this. So at the end now, you have to end it with semicolon. So this is how you can actually simply insert. And then you paste it. Go into this particular thing and paste. See there? Because semicolon we have already put at the end. So it's not waiting here. So query okay. What is the outcome? One row affected. Because one extra row is added now. One extra row is added. Now, how are you going to see all the details now? We know that we are working on FCS is a database. Then the table name is person. So even now, if you ask it to describe what this person is, it will always tell you only what is the structure of that. It doesn't talk about what data is there and all that. If you want to know what data is there and all that, there is a query called select query. We use the select query. Select. Right? So if you want to display the entire thing, we call it as all the columns. Star means all columns. You want to display all the columns. You can selectively select few columns also. That's the reason why the select is. You can select few columns and display only those columns of all the rows, of all the records. Star means all the columns you are interested in. So what is the syntax structure of this particular select command? Select key command, and then the list of the column names. Star is all the columns. From is a keyword again. After that, which table? What is the table from where you want to display? So from person. Right? That's it. Semicolon. Select star from person, meaning that so it's going to ask the database system to retrieve all the details about this particular person. So right now there is only one entry. So you are going to get that particular entry. So you can see it is displaying all of them in this particular format. ID 101, the name is Amarnath, gender male, designation, accountant, department, salary, merit, and all. Whereas you are interested in displaying not all the columns, but rather let us say only the ID, and then name, and then salary you want. You want to display only these things. You can ask it to display only the selected things also. See, all these things you can do even from a higher level language by connecting to the database using database connectors. They are available and you can do that. That's not a part of this particular course, but you must have an idea about how people use that and so on. And remember, select can be used to perform different kind of calculations in MySQL. For example, you want to find out what is 19 times 50. What is 19 times 50? But most of the times that's not the purpose of the database. But in case you want to do such small things, for example, you can do that by using select followed by 19 times 50. Here there is no table that is involved. So straight away you say select followed by this. Then it's going to tell you 19 times 15 is 285. Right? So whenever you want to do small expressions, small calculations, you can do all of them by using the select command. But in case you select the tables, then you can select, get or retrieve the information from that particular table and all. Right? So that is possible there as a part. For example, there is a function called now, in fact. Right? So MySQL supports a number of functions also, in fact. One among them happens to be now. Because it is a function, so you have a parenthesis begins and ends. Now it is displaying the time corresponding to that, date and time, both together. Both together, it's actually displaying. So like this, many things are possible anyhow. So let's go back to what you call insert into kind of thing as a part of that. So if you want to insert many records, that's also possible. That's also possible. So you can copy paste here. This is possible. So ID can be 2 here in place of Amarnath. Can be to say either body kind of it. Finance again. Salary maybe 35,000. Performance maybe 95. Something. You can come back to this. So Hyderabad is also added now. Now if you okay. So
ఇప్పుడు పని చేస్తుంది నొక్కపోయి ఉండింది నువ్వు నొక్కేసి చూడు ఏదో నొక్కపోయి ఉంది కొంచెం ఇప్పుడు ఒకసారి వస్తాను తెచ్చిచ్చారా? ఆ యాప్లో ప్రాబ్లం, వీటిలో ప్రాబ్లం. ఇది తీసుకెళ్ళి ఇప్పుడు ఇది తీసుకో.
పోతావా? Okay, so 2 records are added now like this, in this particular way. Like this, it's possible to execute the commands. And for example, there are certain commands like by which you can find out aggregate commands, aggregate functions, they are called as. So for example, you want to find out what is the maximum salary that is paid among all the employees. You want to find out. So they are called as aggregate functions. Right? So we call them as here aggregate. Aggregate means the commands that will work on a group of records. Normally, most of the commands, they work on individual rows. Individual rows. So on every row, you can do certain calculation. Instead of that, if you want to work on a group of rows, they are considered as aggregate functions. Some of the popular aggregate functions are, you have some of the statistical functions called max is one such thing. Max is a function. It is an aggregate function. Similarly, you have min is there, by which you can find out maximum of all the rows, minimum of all the rows. And you can also find out what is the average of all of them. Average is nothing but, like before that, you also require something called sum. Sum is going to return sum of all the values of all the rows of a particular thing. So you have sum, average, maximum, minimum. So these are some of the aggregate functions that one can make use of. On the individual rows, normal calculations can always be done. For example, let us see here. Let's come back to this particular thing. So you can use the command like select followed by ID. ID is there as a part of it. You don't want to pay complete salary, let us say. You want to pay only 90% of the salary to each one of the individuals. So, on every record, you can actually do the calculation here. 90% means 0.9 multiplied by salary, right? Like this, the calculations can be performed. You can not only access the individual columns, but you can do the expression. You can do the calculations here and then ask it to retrieve, right? And then ask it to retrieve there as a part of it. See there, ID and this particular thing. Maybe name also you want to get. You can always get the name like this. And then see. So it's displaying now the ID, name as well as 0.9 times salary, whatever, right? 22,500. Instead of displaying the expression as it is, you can give a name to that particular expression. Alias, they are called aliasing kind of thing. So 0.9 times salary as, for example, what is this? This is a discounted salary, right? So, or net salary, you can say, right? Net salary. So you can say net direct. Now, as you can see there, ID, name and net. So you can have the expression, and that expression can be given a what you call the corresponding thing. So these are some of the select queries and all that. I'm just about to end this entire session because of the small problems at my end, the hardware, this thing. But we have introduced to MySQL to a certain extent. And just now the group functions you want, group functions or aggregate functions. By just talking about that, we'll close the session. Select followed by, you want to have what is the total salary? Or maybe you want to know how many records are there within this. So for that, there is a command called count. Count is also another aggregate function. So count of, what is that you want to count? You want to count all the records. You say count of star, right? Count of star from person. So this is going to give you how many rows or how many records are there within the table person. So it's giving you 2 rows or 2 records. If you add more and more, like it's going to give you that and that. So whatever. Similarly, you want to find out what is the total salary that you want to pay. Sum of, you can specify sal, or an expression also you can give. Select sum of sal from person, right? So straight away it is going to tell you 60,000, right? Maybe 35 plus 25, whatever, that kind of stuff. So if you want to find out what is the average corresponding thing, you can also find out that. Average of salary, right? So it's going to give you 30,000 here and all that. Because average means it's going to perform sum of salary divided by count of salary. Whenever you perform division, it is likely to end up in fractions and all that. That's why it's actually showing you 30,000 point, all that particular entity. So there are a number of other functions and all that. So you can give /h followed by, for example, f here. So directly it's not, help contents first, and after that maybe whatever he is actually talking about, help followed by contents, right? So contents is one thing. So functions is there, strictly speaking. For example, help followed by functions. Normally it should, I don't know, like, okay. Is it that case sensitive? I don't. Oh, C. So we have not typed C properly. That's why this problem. So there are so many functions here, date and time functions, bit functions. So like this, numeric functions, string functions, right? You can ask it to find out what are the string functions that are there. So you can say help followed by string and then functions. My end, the keyboard is not good. It's really giving all this thing. You can see here substr, substring kind of it, uppercase, U case, or upper whatever, reverse and all that particular. So for example, select followed by aggregate and normal things cannot be mixed anyhow. So for example, here you say U case or upper. So you say upper of. Is going to display the name as well as the salary, but name in all in capital letters, right? So like this, you can invoke built-in library functions within this particular entity. So U case also you can actually invoke that. So anyhow, at this level, I would like to stop the session. And if you have any questions, we can attend to that. And after that, we can close the entire thing. Any questions from your end? So are you able to follow it? I'm going at a very slow pace. So try to install MySQL on your machines if you have laptops and all that. And then practice these commands. It's okay now? Right? So in fact, when you install MySQL, along with that, you will get one of the database called World Database. All the country names, country statistics, and several other details are available there. That is there on another machine, so I could not show you. It's better to take some existing tables to practice the queries. The other possibility is your W3 schools or tutorials point and all that. One of them you can always use it. So at this level, I'm just going to, so once you complete MySQL proper usage, so if you want to quit, you can say /q. So there are several commands here, like that you can actually use. /h will tell you all that. There are so many things. And whenever you want to quit that particular thing, you can say / followed by q. See that? This is how you can quit. Then from here, Control D is going to take us out of that particular. And at this level, let me like stop recording.